In episode 5, while sitting and waiting instructions to find out what's going to happen to his mother, he gets a call, and it's from his mom. But this call wasn't orchestrated by her kidnappers. This was done in secret because she overheard them, and they're planning on selling all the items that Assane stole from them and then killing her. So she needs Assane to act quickly if she has any chance of surviving. With Ben locked up, Assane's options are pretty limited. So he decides to go to the next best thing, a guy that understands him, not quite as much as Ben, but he understands him nonetheless, and it's Yousef. As Yousef walks back into his office, after interrogating Ben, unsuccessfully, mind you, there's Assane sitting there. It confirms Yousef's theory that Assane was alive this entire time. But after the initial surprise wears off, he tries to arrest Assane, and Assane says, "No, I'll go with you, but first, I have a problem." He explains the situation that he currently finds himself in. His mom being kidnapped, these people having all the items that the police are looking for. It's really a win-win. If Yousef were to help Assane get his mom back, he's going to not only be able to arrest these people, he's going to find the items, and on top of it, Assane tells him, "I'm willing to come in. You can arrest me, we just have to get my mom first." Now, at first, Yousef has no interest in this whatsoever. He puts handcuffs on Assane, and he starts questioning exactly how he was able to do everything, fake his own death. As he's talking to Yousef, though, he's undoing his handcuffs. And while Yousef is kind of patting himself on the back for getting Assane safely in the police precinct, under his watchful eye, Assane ends up showing him that the handcuffs are no longer attached to him. He tells Yousef, "I'll stay here if I want to stay here." One of the reasons, though, why Yousef doesn't want to help Assane is the fact that there's one instance where Lupin teamed up with the police officer who was going after him. And Yousef knows how that story ends. It doesn't end well for the police officer. So he figures that this is what Assane is after. But Assane tells him, "No, you need to listen to my plan first." It takes a lot of convincing from Assane, but eventually Yousef does end up agreeing to help him out. But first, he wants some guarantees. He makes Assane film himself on camera with a newspaper saying the date and saying that he faked his own death and he's ready to turn himself in because of his crimes. For Yousef, having proof that Assane is alive sitting on his phone is good enough. And now he wants to hear about that plan. First, though, they decide to go grab a bite to eat. As they're walking into a local cafe, the guy who runs it ends up recognizing Yousef, and he actually recognizes Assane, but since everyone thinks Assane's dead, he just figures that this is a guy who looks like Assane. He thinks that he's a cop, just like Yousef. And that's because they're kind of dressed like cops. This was intentional. It's the vibe that Assane is going for. Now, this is a little weird, but the owner of the cafe comes over to Yousef and says, "Hey, how's your love life?" That's the first thing he says. Not, "Hey, can I get you something to drink? Do you want a bite to eat? The soup of the day is Italian wedding." No. The first thing this guy asks Yousef is, "How's your love life?" Which Yousef is honest about, and he says it's pretty uneventful. But it gets Assane asking Yousef about his love life. He's seen Sophia. He knows what she looks like. So he ends up asking Yousef, "Well, what about her? Why don't you date her? Is there anything wrong with her?" And Yousef right away says, "No, there's nothing wrong with her. She's beautiful, she's smart, attractive, funny, she's perfect. But we work together. I'm not going to mess that up." What Yousef doesn't know is that Assane is secretly filming this with his cell phone in his pocket. It's brief, though, because Assane ends up getting a phone call, and it's from Claire. Claire is no longer hiding the fact from Raoul that she's suspicious about Assane's death. She wants to look into the matter further. She decides to head to the journalist who's been writing articles about this Assane-Lupin theory because her and Raoul feel like this guy has to have an informant. You know, maybe it was Fleur because they work at the same news outlet, but no, it's not. The guy who's been writing these articles is the guy that Ben ended up tipping off in the morgue. Ben has been the informant this entire time. And when Claire gets to the newspaper outlet and she meets with the journalist and she starts asking him exactly who told him all this information, he's honest with her and says, "I don't know." But they sit down with a sketch artist, and after describing the guy, the sketch looks exactly like Ben. It confirms Claire's theory, and now she wants to go meet with Ben. But she doesn't want to go it alone. She doesn't want to bring Raoul, so she decides to call Coach Alex. And that's the phone call that Assane gets. He has to play the part. And Claire admits on the phone that, yeah, this is a little bit weird. She barely knows this coach, but she just doesn't want to do it alone. She needs to go visit her friend in prison, and will he go with her? But that's something that Assane can't do. He has to turn Claire down, as painful as it is, because he needs to go over this plan with Yousef. So Claire has to go it alone. She heads to the prison, she meets with Ben, and she doesn't come right out and ask him. She pretends as if Assane made himself available. Like he came out of hiding, he revealed himself, and that Claire knows that he's alive. At first, Ben's a little hesitant to give in, but her persistent nature and the things that she already knows, like how Ben was the informant this entire time, it leaves Ben thinking, yeah, maybe this is all true. And he asks her, well, did he reveal the next step of his plan? And that's it. Now it's confirmed to Claire that her ex-husband is actually alive. Ben is quickly able to discern the fact that he just got played. But to Claire, she's just relieved. And as Claire was in prison meeting with Ben, Raoul had headed to the cemetery to retrace the steps and try to figure out exactly how his father could have done this. His father, meanwhile, was busy with Yousef formulating this plan on how to get his mother back safely. The plan is pretty simple. If these people are planning on selling the art, they're going to need a middleman. And there's only one middleman that really fits the description of somebody who would work with low-level scum like this. It's a guy that recently got out of prison. The guy's name is Frederic Lazare. He's one of the biggest criminals in Paris, and he was in prison, but he's been out for about a year, and he opened up an art gallery. This guy specializes in stolen paintings and stolen art. If you're to use anybody to be a middleman and formulate a deal to buy stolen art, you'd use Frederic Lazare. But now they have to get to Lazare. And in order to do that, it's going to involve Assane playing a cop. Not exactly something that Yousef is into, but hey, it is Assane's plan after all. And it's a plan, by the way, that works. Both Assane and Yousef walk into the Lazare gallery, and they get him on their side by telling him that they know he's selling fake art, and that's a repeat offense. He could be thrown back in jail if he doesn't help them. They get him to admit that he was asked to set up a sale. So they say, okay, well, when it comes time to do the sale, you let us know, and we'll give you a buyer. What they don't tell him is Yousef is going to be that buyer. But Yousef can't just walk in there as is. He needs a disguise, which means that they're going to have to go back to Assane's hideout. And Assane doesn't want Yousef knowing where that is, so he gives him a ski mask to put on so that he can keep this hideout still hidden. When they arrive a little while later, Yousef is like a kid in a candy store. He's amazed at all the things that Assane has. He just thinks it's cool. He does attempt, though, to do this thing the right way, telling Assane that he would make a really good cop and it could just investigate, find out who did this, get his mom the correct way. But to that, Assane shakes his head and says, no, I don't work with cops. Who I do work with is Justin Avisto, a great collector of stolen art. And Justin Avisto is going to be Yousef's alias. After picking the perfect disguise, they head to the meeting location, which is going to be in a hotel. Yousef is going to have an earpiece as he walks into the room where the sale is going down. He's going to be able to hear everything that Assane is telling him. And Assane's going to try to walk him through this. But what Yousef doesn't know is that Assane has, in fact, double-crossed him, just like in the Lupin book. Assane needed to make sure that he could track these people back to who's ever actually the ringleader of this whole thing. The way to do that is to cause panic. Assane tipped off Sophia to the fact that there was a guy who was about to buy the Manet painting. And when Sophia shows up, right away, Yousef tells her, Sophia, it's me. I'm undercover. But all this panic does work. Because one of the ringleader's men ends up leaving out the back door, and it allows Assane to leave and follow him. But before he goes, Assane does tell Yousef, hey man, you did great tonight, but the rest of the plan doesn't involve you. But you did end up getting the bracelet and the painting and the pearl, so congrats. And then Assane takes off down the street. He follows this guy to an unmarked building, where he looks inside and he sees who the ringleader is, and he recognizes him. It's his former boxing trainer, Keller. Assane grew up with this guy, and he did act like a father figure, but he was also a real piece of crap. He was somebody that Claire, early on, saw right through. The guy trained Bruno and Assane, but he did so with ulterior motives. He used all the personal information that Assane gave him against them in this situation, i.e., Assane's mom. Assane knows that he can't just jump into action, though, even though he wants to. He has to formulate a plan. Now, back at the hotel, Sophia has major questions as to why the Golden Boy went rogue to an undercover mission. And at first, Yousef just tries to play it off like, Sophia, I got everything back. It's good. He then looks at her, though, and says, what are you even doing here? And she tells him that she got a phone call from somebody telling her that this transaction was going down. And right away, Yousef knows that it was Assane. He pulls out his phone and tries to show Sophia the video that Assane recorded, but when Assane returned to the cafe after the phone call with Claire, he was able to do a file transfer from phone to phone. He took the video that he recorded off of Yousef's phone and replaced it with the video of him talking about Sophia. So when Yousef says, hey, check the last video, she hears how Yousef feels about her, and it gets insanely awkward, but she is flattered. After the initial awkwardness, they decide to talk about what they're going to tell their boss, and they just decide the truth, that they got them an A back. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.